Hey guys, it's me, Mox. I hope you all are doing super lovely. I know. I don't do Sarai's intro justice. I get it. But I'm kind of new to this, so please be kind. Sarai's not feeling well, so she asked if I would fill in today, so here I am. And if you're wondering who I am, which I'm hoping you already know, but I am the Hot Topic chick. Still no clue? Okay, well, highly offended. But it's okay. I forgive easily. So she asked me to do a spooktacular video today. So of course this is Halloween themed, and what better type of video to do than a spooky stories video. And if you do know who I am, and you're wondering how I got here, I obviously time traveled. Shh. Don't tell anyone. And luckily, I got here all in one piece, except a few frazzled hairs. So, sit back, relax, maybe grab a drink, I don't know, some hot coffee or hot chocolate, kombucha. I don't know. You guys drink some weird stuff these days. Yeah, not a fan of the kombucha, but you do you. Okay, so I have a couple stories here. I'm going to be reading these for the very first time, so hopefully they are good. Fingers crossed. So the first one is called, Have you recently received a black envelope in the mail? This was written by Grand Theft Motto. Very clever name. Here we go. I hope you don't get spooked too hard. I've worked for the United States Postal Service for most of my adult life. My career started 40 years ago in the sorting room, and it will end today after I post this message. They are suppressing any leaks. They might even find a way to sweep this under the rug. But I have to put it out there. If I don't, I'll never get another night's sleep. There's a good chance you'll receive a black envelope in the mail one day in the near future. If you do, please don't open it. Nothing bad will happen right then. The envelope itself isn't really special, but inside of it, you'll find a white condolence card with your name and a date written in it in a pretty old and fond. I promise that you don't want to know that date. None of us should know the day that we die before it happens. Chills. The first time I encountered a black envelope, I was still in the sorting room. I remember pausing to study the paper for a moment. Besides the unusual color, it also felt different. Different than any of the thousands of other envelopes I'd handled before. The paper was thick, almost porous, and slightly warm to the touch. It was heavy for how thin it was. When my supervisor noticed what caught my attention, she pulled me into her office and shut the door. I was hoping we wouldn't see any of those this year, Diana told me, nodding for me to sit down. I still had the black envelope in my hand. The recipient's address was printed in clean, white lettering on the front. There was no return address. "Is this something special?" I asked, trying to hand her the envelope. Diana jerked back like I'd offered her an unpinned hand grenade. "Yes," she said, "the very worst kind of special. We see one or two come through every couple of years. Some folks have been working here for a decade and aren't even aware of them. Just bad luck that you found one." I felt a chill lick down my spine. Bad luck? We have an unofficial policy about those particular pieces of mail. Sort them and forget about them. Don't report them. For God's sake, don't open them. Sort it, but there's no return address. "There never is," Diana said, standing up. "Now please, get that thing out of my office and don't mention it to me or anyone here. Hopefully we won't see any more for a long time." I did as I was told, but couldn't get the envelope out of my mind. I remember it feeling slightly damp when I sorted it into outgoing, like it was oily, even greasy. Months passed, and I managed to finally stop wincing every time a new load of mail came in for sorting. Then, a little more than a year after finding my first black envelope, I found another. Then, another. Within the space of 6 months, I'd sorted a dozen of the things. Always lacking return addresses, always feeling off to the touch. Diana began avoiding me. Some of my coworkers, the old hands who'd been in the mailroom since they probably used ponies for deliveries, gave me a wide berth too. It seemed I had some nasty cloud floating over me, as if I was responsible for the influx of envelopes. I began having nightmares, vivid but smeared panic dreams full of heat and shadow and violence. Next year, I was transferred from sorting to deliveries. I suspect Diana just wanted me gone from the tiny smoke-filled, remember this was 4 years ago, room that passed for a kingdom. I was bad luck. That was fine by me. I laced up my boots, got a comfortable hat, and started making my rounds. My first assignment was to a quiet neighborhood on Maryland shore. You've likely seen similar places, gravel driveways, oak trees with tire swings, above ground swimming pools. I loved it and always carried candy for the kids that would rush out some mornings hoping for a package or present or special letter. I brought milk bones for the dogs too, who were generally much friendlier than I'd been led to expect. In 4 years walking that beat, I was only chased by a canine once. And when the retriever caught me, it turned out that she just wanted to play. Memories of the black envelopes and my coworkers' nervous glances faded quickly against the fresh air and sunlight of my new position. Until one winter, when I dropped off the mail to a regular. Betty Majors was a lovely old woman with silver hair and an endless parade of colorful bathrobes. She'd always meet me at the box at the end of her drive to collect her mail in person. Usually we'd stand for a minute and chit-chat while she opened her letters. I was just updating her on my engagement to a beautiful girl 2 towns over when I saw Betty frown. She was glancing at the pile of mail in her hands. I felt a cramp in my lower stomach. I couldn't explain an emerging sense of dread as I followed her gaze. Sure enough, she was holding a familiar black envelope with white lettering. Odd, she said, carefully tearing the seal. I suppressed an irrational urge to yank the envelope from her hand. Instead, I watched her face as she read the message inside. Betty seemed confused. She looked up at me. No return address. Doesn't look like it. Can I ask? It's none of my business, but... Betty shrugged and lifted the small square card up for my inspection. It's almost like an invitation, but it doesn't say for what. Gold letters, white stock, Betty's name, and a date a little more than 2 weeks in the future. That was all. I shrugged and tried to smile. It's probably for a wedding, a funeral, or a birthday party. All 3 sound like too much work at my age, Betty giggled, already moving on to open up the next letter. We said our goodbyes and I finished my route. I tried to put the envelope out of my mind, but the morning of the day in the letter, I couldn't help but feel anxious. When Betty didn't meet me at the mailbox for our usual chat, the anxiety began to climb towards a panic. I decided to bring her letters right to her door in case she was sick or occupied. A stranger answered when I knocked. A young woman with swollen red eyes. Betty's granddaughter. My client, my friend, had passed from a stroke early that morning. Some family was visiting for the holiday and found her body just after dawn. I'd only barely missed the ambulance as it took her away. I've never been religious, but after that day, I started going to church. I always repeated the same prayer before leaving. Lord, no more black envelopes. My prayers were answered for 3 years until I had to deliver another. It was the same neighborhood and the same result. The man died 3 months after my delivery. There was another envelope the next year, another death. Other people I delivered to passed away without receiving the mysterious letters, though. I could see no rhyme or reason in it. All I could do was continue my route and say an extra prayer for anyone who received a dark delivery. Each of them died within a year receiving a black envelope. I took solace in the fact that none of them knew what the date meant. However, judging by the fear I saw with a few folks, I worry they might have guessed. Years ticked by and I moved from deliveries to an office to administration. I was hoping for a quiet retirement this year. Then, a few months ago, the manager of my sorting room came to my office, badly shaken. Black envelopes. Dozens. Hundreds. More than he'd ever seen. Not all of his staff had caught on that there was something gruesome about the deliveries, but rumors were spreading. Word came from up high to slow down circulation, to act like everything was normal, basically to put our heads in the sand. Another unofficial policy drifted down to management. Lose the envelopes, trash them, destroy them. It didn't matter. We'd burn the bastards by the dumpster load, and somehow the letters would be back in the sorting room the next day. No one could explain it. No one could figure out who was bringing in the envelopes or how to stop them. The same names and addresses would show up again and again until we finally broke. We broke down and delivered them. All of this was done in secret as much as we could manage. I don't know how many people in USPS have got on. Maybe 10? Perfect. Maybe fewer? My guess is the government is afraid of mass panic if word gets out. I understand that, but I'm still posting this because no matter what we do, the envelopes continue to flow. People keep opening them, and even if they aren't sure what the date means, I think it sticks with them. Turns up in their dreams, eats away at the time they have left, and makes them rot with worry. So I'm sending out this message, and then I'm leaving. I'm going to try to enjoy the time I have left. You see, not too long ago, I found a black envelope addressed to me. I couldn't help myself. I read the date. You always think you'll have more time. Curiosity is such a vicious animal. When we started getting that influx of marked letters earlier this year, I snuck a dozen of them out of the sorting room to read in my office. If you apply gentle heat to the adhesive, it's not too hard to reseal the envelopes later without damage. A dozen names, a dozen strangers, but each of them had the same date written in that terrible golden ink. I pulled more envelopes at random over the next few months. The date was always the same, over and over and over. Hundreds, thousands. I think something awful is coming. That was awesome. I don't know about you guys, but this person is a wonderful storyteller, and I could just picture every moment, and I could picture where this person worked. I could picture the black envelope, and I could picture the clients or the people that he gave mail too. Very eerie, very ominous. I love it. Okay, on to the next one. Here we go. This one is called My Twin Brother Was Just Built Different by lightingnations. Lightingnations. Dr. Miller misdiagnosed my brother as Bell's palsy, if you can believe that crap. $23,000 a year on health insurance, and that's his expert diagnosis. Effing prick. He handed me some antibiotics and said, just take it easy for a few weeks. On my 6th straight day of couch surfing, I developed this bad facial tic. And then my pinky started smashing. It wasn't long before my left arm felt all numb. And by day 9, I could barely wiggle my fingers. The hack doctor insisted it'd clear up if I just relaxed. All I could think was, you are lucky I can't make a effing fist a-hole. One morning, I woke up making these odd guttural sounds, which sounded like the elephant man having an orgasm. And then my arm started to move all on its own. Soon, I was saying complete words I didn't mean. My wife, Maria, got worried, said she never heard me swear, that it was completely out of character. My mouth called her a stupid biatch. She took her 6-year-old daughter and went to stay with a friend so I could be alone with zero pressure. 2 days passed. 1 minute I'm listening to whale songs on YouTube, curtains drawn. Next, my right pinky finger started to sting. I looked down and watched my left hand peel off a nail all the way down to the bed. I raced into the kitchen to call the doctor, but before he could answer, I snatched the phone away from myself and hurled it into a wall. Then I curled a fist and punched myself in the right eye. Lying on the floor, I said, "What the?" "Hello, Daniel," a cold voice replied. The words came out of my mouth, but it felt like before, like I'd said them without meaning to. I clambered to my feet and leaned close to a wine cabinet with a glass front. There was a giant welt above my eye, the size of a golf ball, swelling it shut. "Who said that?" I shouted. My neck cranked to the left. Then my reflection replied, "What's the matter, Daniel? Don't remember me?" I tilted right. What is this? What's going on? Back to the left. Oh, of course, I almost forgot. You don't know me, but I sure as hell know you. In the glass, one side of my face looked calm and composed, while the other half was like a man on death row. "Who the hell are you?" I snapped. "Swearing, Daniel? Really?" Disc. Half of me chuckled. What would Maria think? How do you know about Maria? Because I know everything about you, Daniel. I've been here since the beginning, watching, waiting. What do you mean, since the beginning? My expression darkened. It was a time when it was the two of us, swimming happily in Mom's womb. But greedy little Daniel couldn't learn to share. Couldn't stand not being the center of attention, even before we were effing born. I gasped. You mean... That's right. I'm your twin, who never got a chance at life. You absorbed me before I'd even taken my first breath. But I survived. In here. He poked at our left temple. For 33 years, I've been a gleam in your eye, spending my life trapped inside oblivion. But now, I'm out. He suddenly thrust us headfirst into the cabinet. When we came back out, shards of glass stuck out of my forehead like a pincushion. You can call me Jerry, he growled. And I'm taking control. Shuffling our feet, Jerry went one way while I went the other, resulting in us waltzing awkwardly around the room. Plates smashed against the floor as we tumbled sideways into drawers, and all the while I'm screaming, "You'll kill us both," over and over. He took our left arm, which he now had complete control over, and put me in a half Nelson. Then he pulled us up onto the counter. A frying pan was hanging on the wall at the far side. Cheek flat against the cold granite surface, he planted my arm and elbow and dragged us along. "No," I rasped feebly. He grabbed the pan and aimed it backward. Then he made us straighten up and brought it down in a shining arc. My right temple throbbed painfully, then Jerry's control became stronger, more complete. I grabbed my opposite wrist, stopping him from striking a second time. Jerry growled. He was on a murder mission. What my family would have come home to wouldn't be me. Maybe Jerry would hurt them, or walk out and never come back, and then my daughter would grow up wondering why Daddy didn't love her. Summoning all my strength, I pushed the pan away and focused hard. It was still my body. I was the one in control. I forced my hand to angle the pan away from my right temple, towards the left. Jerry screamed, "No," as the blunt object connected with a hollow ring. I struck a second time, and then he was no more. By the time my wife got back, the mess in the kitchen was all cleaned up. She saw my bandages and freaked, but I explained how I just slipped down some stairs and was completely fine. Then I said I had fantastic news. I smiled with both sides of my mouth and juggled the oranges in the fruit bowl. I told her some time alone was all I needed, and that things were going to be fine. We kissed. So there you go. Happy ending, right? Well, the story is not quite finished. I've got a confession to make. I pulled a little sneaky on you. What I told you was mostly true. All that stuff about twins, the crappy doctor, how only one brother survived the scuffle in the kitchen. Just not the one you thought. As I type this, Daniel's daughter is stretched across my lap, watching DuckTales on an iPad. Maria's working in the study. I planned to clear out the joint checking account and hightail it to Tijuana the second I took over, but honestly, watching Daniel's happy family for all those years made me slightly jealous. Once I got out, I decided to stick around for a little while, and before long I was thinking, hey, this ain't half bad. Turned out, so long as I curb the foul language, nobody can tell Daniel and me apart. His life fits like a comfortable glove. I think I'm gonna keep it. The fighting scene was pretty intense. Well written as well. It was good. Kind of a body snatcher situation, but slightly different. Okay. On to the next one. This one is called There's an Ice Cream Truck in My Neighborhood. If you're a kid too, don't go near it. From Certain Emergency 122. All the kids in my neighborhood know the story about the ice cream truck. It's not a nice one. We do try to tell our parents about what the ice cream truck does to kids, but it's like talking to a brick wall. If you breathe a word of the story to them, they'll simply freeze in place, their eyes glazing over and unblinking, smiles stretching their faces. It isn't until you give up, feeling completely disheartened and alone, that your parents emerge from their trance, looking puzzled. They'll pat you on the head, shoulder, and ask, "What were you saying, kiddo?" So you see, we can't tell our parents or any other adults about the ice cream truck. It won't let us. It won't let us. I hope the same thing won't happen to you. If you're an adult and reading this, I'm sorry if it does. Truly sorry. But I need to warn other kids. Don't move here to Adaport. The story goes like this. There's a kid named Roger, 10 years old, or maybe 8, or maybe as old as 16. Roger strolls along the street on his way to school, or on his way back from it. He walks without a care in the world, swinging his backpack. He's whistling because it's a fine, beautiful, sunlight-strewn day, and then, right as he's nearly reached his destination, he hears it. A strange, but cheerful jingle. He starts to smile because he can't help it. That ice cream truck jingle is the kind of sound that makes kids laugh, puts a pep in their step, makes them think about the people or things they love. Roger thinks about his parents and the stack of superhero comics on his desk. And while he's thinking all of these delightful things, he slows down. You don't want to do that when the ice cream truck is around. The source of that jingle rounds the corner and barrels straight at him. Roger sees that it's an ice cream truck. It looks like something you'd see in hell, he thinks, and then scolds himself. Where did that stupid thought come from? No, that ice cream truck doesn't look scary at all. It looks fun. Bright shapes decorate every inch of it, and as it approaches Roger, he looks at it more closely and realizes that there are superheroes all over the truck. Superman, Batman, Captain Marvel, The Flash. He's amazed. He's never seen an ice cream truck decorated like that before. Strike that, he's never seen any vehicle decorated like that. The ice cream truck has no name, but he's sure the owner is a great guy. Someone who loves comics too. Obviously. Roger walks over to the truck as it slows down next to him. He can't help it. Someone else has control of his legs now, and they mean for him to come to them. He walks over to the small, shuttered window where they normally serve ice cream, and then the door to the truck opens. There are multiple endings to this story because no one agrees on what exactly happens when the door opens, except for one thing. Roger disappears. he's never seen again. Back then, I thought that story was a huge load of crap. An ice cream truck? Really? That was one of the least frightening things I'd ever heard of. Anyways, I was dealing with enough problems at school. I didn't need to expend energy worrying about some dumb ice cream truck. Richard Golden led the pack of my bullies. I still don't know why he hated me so much. Maybe it was because of my height or my annoying high-pitched voice. Either way, he set out to destroy my life, which wasn't a surprise because I'd been bullied before at other schools. The new kid was always an easy target, and bullies gravitated towards me like bees to honey. Richard wasn't dumb enough to do anything life-threatening, but in some ways, the petty crap was worse. It meant that none of the teachers took me seriously when I complained about what was going on. Boys will be boys, my world literature teacher said indulgently. I had to constantly watch my back and my front. Actually, all directions. I never knew when he and his sycophants would strike. They tried to trip me whenever they saw me walking down the hallways or in the cafeteria. If I brought lunch from home, they either stole it or ruined it. They shoved me into lockers, knocked me upside my head, and muttered insults at me. If I didn't keep a death grip on my backpack, they stole that too. They would pass it around to each other, laughing hysterically as I tried to save my homework, my textbooks, and my pencil pouch. If you've ever been bullied, then you understand. School was hell. And just like my teachers, my parents didn't take it seriously. I knew that my dad was disappointed in me. He wanted me to be tougher, stronger, to be a real man. I'd heard him talking to my mom late at night when they both thought I was asleep. Why isn't William like other boys his age? All he does is read. My mom had hushed him, but she shouldn't have bothered. My dad and I had always had an uneasy relationship. All this to say, when I went to school on Friday morning, I braced myself for the usual BS. But I entered my first period math class to find everyone looking somber and subdued. It was eerie to be surrounded by so many pale, silent faces. They looked up at me when I entered the room, then looked back down to their desks. Many of them were sitting very still, not doing homework or chatting with their friends, but just staring off into space. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I leaned over to my desk mate, Sarah, and whispered, "What happened?" Sarah only sometimes signed to speak with me. It wasn't out of arrogance, but fear. Nobody wanted to be my friend because nobody wanted to become the new target of Richard's sadism. Now she turned to me with wide eyes and said, "He's been missing for nearly 15 hours. His parents called the police station and said he never showed up." Couldn't have happened to a nicer person, I thought. But I still wondered why everyone looked so stricken. Richard had never been that popular. I was pretty sure most of us hated and feared him in equal measures. And then I heard it. Someone behind us said, "It's the ice cream truck again." Sarah whipped her head around to glare at the offender, Emily. She was a quiet kid and didn't usually speak. Now she fidgeted in her seat, drumming her fingers on her desk and periodically looking at the doorway as if she longed to escape. "Don't be an idiot," said Sarah sharply. "There's no such thing. It's not real." Personally, I agreed. The ice cream truck story was just that, a story. It was far more likely that Richard had simply run away, though he wasn't really the type to do that. Maybe if I kidnapped him or a serial killer. I didn't wish that fate on anyone, but I'd be lying if I said that there wasn't some part of me that thought Richard would deserve it. We all stopped talking when Miss Auden entered the classroom. She glanced around at us, her eyebrows raised, as if she was puzzled by such an extraordinary feat, but she didn't ask what was going on. Richard's parents had probably already contacted the school. The math lessons simply continued on as usual. The entire school was a blur for me. I'd be alert, on the lookout for shoves and teasing, and then I'd remember that Richard was missing, and I didn't have to constantly scan my surroundings anymore. Without Richard around, the usual pack of bullies had dissipated, some of them glumly eating by themselves in the cafeteria. That day was probably the best day I'd ever had at school. Everyone left me alone. I started to think that maybe it wasn't such a bad thing if Richard was, incapacitated for a while longer. I didn't exactly want him dead, but I was enjoying the peace and silence of his absence. When the school bell rang, for once, I didn't have to speed out of there like a bat out of hell. Instead, I walked slowly and calmly, enjoying the sunshine that had made a sudden reappearance. Winter in NorCal only lasts for all of 2 weeks, but I had gotten spoiled by the good weather. The temperature was in the high 50s and a brisk wind swept over me. It was perfect weather for my walk back home, a trek that usually took around 30 minutes. As I walked home, I shuffled the playlist on my iPod, and Anne's Into the Void blared through my earbuds, and I relaxed. I loved rock and heavy metal. Unsurprisingly, my dad disapproved. Right as Into the Void switched over to the different song, I heard a strange noise. I still had my earbuds on, but I could almost hear it. Maybe it was someone blasting music from their car, or someone practicing drums in their parents' garage or basement. I hesitated, one hand over my left earbud. Curiosity got the better of me. I lowered my earbud, and a blast of sound hit me. I don't know how to describe what I heard. It was one of those melodies that gets trapped in your head, but no matter how hard you try, you can't recreate it. You'll try to hum it or play it, and whatever comes out of your lips and fingers just doesn't match up to what's in your head. It was even more than that, though. The melody I heard somehow had multiple dimensions to it. Sight, smell, and taste. As I listened, I could see that the melody was a carnival, not like or reminded me of a carnival. It was a carnival. I stood there, unmoving, my head tilted to one side like a bird mesmerized by a snake. I could see the performers in colorful costumes running around on their stilts. I could even smell the popcorn, taste the cotton candy. It was so real that I began to chew on it. The taste of blood in my mouth brought me back to myself. I had bitten the inside of my bottom lip, not as badly as I could have, but bad enough that when I ran my tongue over it, I could feel blood pooling in the indentations of my teeth. I looked around myself widely like a dreamer who had just woken from a nightmare, and I saw where the melody came from. An ice cream truck. It had no name on its side. It rolled towards me slowly, and I couldn't tear my eyes away. It was beautiful, breathtaking. I thought of my mom, then because she painted in her spare time. It was one of the hobbies we bonded over together that disgusted my dad so much. Real men didn't paint. The way the colors swirled over the truck reminded me of our favorite painting, Somewhere New, by Linda Woods. It also made me think irresistibly of ice cream, the colorful yellow and pink and orange swirls of sherbet, rainbow ice cream. I walked towards the ice cream truck. It waited for me, the engine rumbling strangely loudly. The door opened, and I saw who owned the ice cream truck. For an instant, long, black, gray arms reached for me, and then I blinked, and an old man stood in front of me, his arms held out in welcome. He had strangely bony hands and wrists, but his bright blue eyes twinkled with warmth and welcome. I smiled back at him. He was so hunched over that we were nearly of equal height. "Hello, young man. My name is John Goodman. Would you like some ice cream?" I nodded and began walking forward. The open door yawned behind him into darkness. There was a moment of unease, and then I told myself not to be silly. I could trust Mr. Goodman. He was my friend. A sharp pain pierced my right ear, the one with the earbuds still in it. The wretched screeched in my ear, and I instinctively tried to lower the volume. The iPod slipped through my fingers and hit the ground. I started to bend down to pick it up, and then froze. The old man's face flickered. 1 second, there was a kind, gentle man reaching out to help me. The next, something monstrous. It towered over me and had multiple stick-like arms and legs. That was the first thing I noticed. The next, that its enormous body was rotting. It looked and smelled the way spoiled meat does. Every time it moved forward on those thin legs, flakes of skin drifted off from it. Worse, though. Worse than its insane white eyes and its gaping mouth were the faces. Faces covered every part of its body and arms and legs, and all of them were screaming. Faces of kids whose eyes rolled madly in their sockets, whose black tongues flapped out, and whose shredded lips formed incoherent shapes. I saw Richard's face on one of its arms, and he saw me. We stared at each other for a full second, and then I scrambled backwards as the thing's hands reached out for me. Its black talons grasping for my face, my clothes, my arms. I screamed in one startled burst and turned to run, and as I ran, I heard it behind me screaming too. Unlike mine, it was a scream of frustrated rage. I risked a glance backwards and saw it slump down beside the ice cream truck, beating its many arms against the ground in a fit of petulance. The faces of the kids on its arms wailed as their faces smashed apart. Bits of bones flying through the air, noses and eyes and lips gouged out to bleed down their cheeks. Once I got home, I went straight to my bedroom and locked the door. I barricaded it with my bookcase and my desk. I even pushed my bed against it. If I had anything else to put between myself and the door, I would have used that too. I sat in the middle of my wrecked and messy room and trembled and waited for the thing to track me down and kill me. My parents came home, and my dad forced me to undo the barricade. We ate dinner together, and the food was ash in my mouth. As usual, my dad ignored me except to tell me that it was rude to wear earbuds during dinner. I took them off, but kept them in the pocket of my hoodie. My mom, though, she noticed I wasn't my usual self. As we watched TV together, the images swirling into a colorful mess before my eyes. She touched my forehead. "What's wrong, Will?" That was all it took. A dam broke inside my chest, and even though I was worried that she'd cart me off to a mental hospital, I told my mom everything. I finished it with, "I think I got Richard, the guy who gives me a hard time at school. What should we do?" Complete silence. I lowered my hands from my face. My mom had the strangest expression on her face. She was so still that she looked like one of those store mannequins poised behind a storefront window. Finally, she moved. Her eyes began to blink, and her mouth stretched into a yawn. "I'm sorry, honey, What were you saying? Nothing, I replied, my chest hollow. I think I'm coming down with something. I excused myself to bed and barricaded my bedroom door again. Thankfully, I hadn't lost my iPod. I picked up from where it was charging and slipped the earbuds from my pocket into my ears. There was no way in hell that I ever would take them off again. It wasn't until I was close to falling asleep that I heard it. A cheerful, lively melody so loud I could almost hear it over the music in my earbuds. But I kept turning up the volume on my iPod. Even when it hurt so badly, I would have given anything to turn it off. I stood up and sprinted over to my bedroom window, looking down. As I expected, the ice cream truck was parked outside the street, waiting for me. Moonlight turned its bright spirals of colors into a cruel, mocking joke, and the longer I stared at the truck, the easier it became to see that the colors weren't really there. No, the truck was decorated with small bones made from them. Bones glimmered in their spirals under the moonlight and jutted out of the truck. And although I knew it was just my imagination, it seemed to me that I could hear the screams of children again. Someone screamed my name over and over and over. It sounded like Richard. But he could scream as much as he wanted to because I wasn't going down there. Not if I could help it. I knew that there was something in the ice cream truck looking up at me, its white eyes gleaming as drool dripped down its chin. Something waited for me to take out my earbuds, waited for me to make a single mistake, waited for me to come outside. Something's hungry. This one was definitely 10 out of 10. I already have an irrational fear of the ice cream truck, so this was everything. And I don't know about you guys, but the music that typically plays, at least for the ice cream truck that comes around my block, it sounds like the song from Are You Afraid of the Dark? So creepy. So creepy. Okay. One more. And I think we're done. Let's do this one. And this last one is titled, I Just Came Back from Camping, and there is something very wrong with my photos. Written by The Poisoned Antidote. Last night, I came back from one of those mental health camping trips where all you bring, electronic-wise, is an emergency radio and a digital camera. Other than what I am about to tell you, it was actually insanely good for my health. I was struggling with my job for a little bit, and let's be honest, I was also struggling with life in general, but was finally able to simply relax. It's what felt like the first time in years, to be honest. I came back a new person, a fresh slate to write the rest of my life on. I later found out I came back a new person in a more literal way. The camping part went smoothly. I enjoyed some fishing, cooked with a campfire, met some other people on their own retreat as well. You know, the normal camping stuff. I also took lots of pictures. A week after I arrived, I packed up all my things and went back to my truck, ready to go back to my home. The ride back went smoothly, but I do have to admit, that first night of sleeping in my own bed, rather than a cot, felt so good. I woke up this morning, and decided to go through my photos before heading into work to see what I wanted to download to my computer and what I wanted to trash. This is where things get odd. The first picture was me with a group of about 6 other people. I don't remember a single one of these guys. All of their faces were blurred out, like they turned their heads swiftly right as the picture was being taken of them. We all had our hands around each other, and the girl next to me was getting really close and personal with my waist. But I don't remember a single one of them. This catches me off guard. I just know I went camping alone, but from the looks of these pictures, I can see my tent in the background with a couple other tents placed there too, all in perfect condition. It felt like I was staring at an alternate reality, like what could have been if I went with a group. Eventually, I shrugged it off as maybe drinking a little too much one night and forgetting about a group of wanderers that just set up with me for the night. You know, lousy excuse that made me feel less insane. Eventually, I scrolled through the rest of the pics. Some of them are things I remembered, like fishing and cooking, but they always had other people in it, as if they were removed by my memories, and like always their faces were blurred. Now I go to the second day's worth of pictures. At the start of the day, there seems to be the same picture as before, except the guy all the way to the left wasn't in the picture anymore, just simply gone. Again, the same process continues. The rest of the pictures that day are the ones I remember, but simply with more people added into the mix that I don't. I look at the next day and another person disappears. The next day, another one disappears, and then another. Again, another goes, continuing the process until there's just me and this woman left. Her arms around my waist, hugging me with a blurred face. I noticed that all of the tents were still there, but tattered as if they just got out of a storm, except mine, which was perfect. And now I'm beyond freaking out, trying to make sense of what happened. Who were they? Where did they go? What is happening? Why don't I remember? I look down at my watch and notice that I have been pondering over these photos for way too long and was a couple hours late for work. I shoved the camera into my bag, and since I was already dressed, I ran to the car. I get into the office about half an hour later. Walking in disheveled, I got a few looks from some of my employees, but shrugged them off, heading to my office. One of them walks up to me to ask me something I don't think I'll ever forget. Where's your wife? My wife? Yeah, her and the rest of the management. You guys all went on a retreat, and you're the first one to come back. I look at my desk and notice a picture with all 7 of us from the original photo. I quickly open my camera and go back to my first photo, matching the bodies up with each other to confirm their identities. Sure enough, they were the management that I worked with, but I still did not remember a single one of them. I scroll to the last photo I have taken and see me, only me, and 6 blurred bodies hanging, suspended from trees behind me, with their heads all forcefully bent in a 90-degree angle. I noticed that my hands were both well within view of the pictures as my blood went cold. who was taking all of the pictures. Oof. Chills. This one is really, really creepy, and I would love to know your theory on what exactly happened. For sure, it seems as though there was an alternate reality and he somehow got switched into a different reality. However, it doesn't really explain who's taking the photos and what exactly happened to his coworkers. What I'm guessing is perhaps the person taking the photo is him, but in the alternate reality that he's now in, if that makes sense. I don't know. That's crazy. That's insane. Okay, so I hope that you enjoy these spooky stories. I would love to read you more in the future. Thanks for spending time with Mox today. Mox. You guys are really fun, I have to admit. Nice crowd. Okay, guys. Well, until we meet again, maybe next Halloween, or hey, just give me a holler if you want to see me again. And as always, love you to the full moon.